Utilities around the world are grappling with how to decarbonize their power generation and distribution systems, and many of them are committing to net zero emissions by 2040, 2050. Well, a group in Calgary wants the municipally owned ENMAX utility to decarbonize and commit to net zero emissions by 2050. They've submitted an open letter with 300 signatures to it, and we're going to talk to Joe Vipond, who is a member of the Calgary Climate Club and a local Climate Hub and a local physician. So welcome to the interview, Joe.
Thanks for having me on, Markham.
Look, Joe, give us an overview of this letter, why you're doing what you're doing.
Well, I mean, the reality is our planet needs to decarbonize, our province needs to decarbonize, and our city needs to decarbonize. We can't do that without getting a net zero grid. So we've seen multiple companies around the province and around the country and around the world declare net zero targets. Electricity arguably is the easiest sector of the economy to decarbonize. We know we can do that through energy efficiency and other technologies like solar and wind and nuclear. And yet there has been resistance at the municipal level with ENMAX to declare a net zero target. In the last year, we've seen other big utilities here like Capital Power and TransAlta declare net zero. We've seen Joe Biden be elected in the United States and declare net zero for 2035, which is like a full 15 years prior to what we're asking for from ENMAX, and only 15 years away. So we just think ENMAX has to be ambitious when it comes to this and join the party.
Part of the problem here, I would imagine, if you're looking at it from ENMAX's point of view, is they have made huge investments in natural gas-fired generation in the last 5 or 10 years. And those often have, a life of 40, 50 years. Is that the kind of feedback that you've been getting from ENMAX?
They've recognized that natural gas is a problem, and they've verbally committed to us that they'll never be building another natural gas generation facility again. And what's really interesting about the Shepard plant is that they're already doing carbon capture, utilization, and storage experiments there. It's part of the Project X, that's been announced, where they're, a certain, I think it's $1 million or something along those lines, that it's going to be awarded to the organization that finds the best utilization strategy for carbon dioxide. So, they already have processes in place for that facility. Now, that's not to say it's not going to be difficult to go fully carbon capture and storage at that facility, but they can do it. So I'm sure that will have to be part of their strategy in order to keep that relatively new facility alive. And let's be honest, Markham, I've known about the climate crisis since at least 1989. The Shepard plant was built, I think, 2014, 2015, along those lines. They should have been factoring in this existential threat to our civilization in their capital planning way sooner than they were.
Now, I think it's fairly well known that southern Alberta is some of the best solar and wind resources in all of Canada. And it seems to me that if you were going to decarbonize a power grid, that the access to those kinds of low-cost renewables should be part of the plan. Has ENMAX indicated to you in any way that might be part of their strategy, over the next 10, 20 years?
They haven't told us what their plans are going forward. A lot of our conversations to this point have been them pointing out what they've done in the past, and we really want them to be forward-looking and create a plan going forward rather than just saying, look what we've done already.
Joe, how much of this, I want to call it foot dragging, but the fact that Alberta seems to be late to the game and ENMAX seems to be late to the net zero emissions game, it comes from not having a clear strategy from the provincial government on decarbonizing and hitting these targets. It doesn't seem like there's the kind of pressure on ENMAX that there is in other jurisdictions like, say, BC or Quebec, where you have very clear net zero climate policies. And that, I don't know, what's your take on that?
I think it's interesting that it's not something unique to Alberta, because there are lots of Alberta companies that have declared net zero targets, including two of our biggest utility here, right? Capital Power and TransAlta. So it's something more unique to ENMAX. I think one of the ironies is, I've been a bit of a left-wing lunatic over the years, and I think naturally would think that government-owned institutions would be better sometimes than public institutions like that are traded on the stock market. But the reality is that Capital Power and TransAlta face pressures both with share prices and also with having to raise money on capital markets that ENMAX doesn't face. They're beholden to the City of Calgary as shareholders, and unless the City of Calgary puts pressure on ENMAX, it's hard to see how that some of these decisions are going to come forward. So it has been slower with this company than with many other companies. So hopefully the citizens of Calgary, through stuff like our open letter, will continue to put pressure on ENMAX to do the right thing.
Well, given that this is, ENMAX is municipally owned by the City of Calgary, have you talked to Mayor Naheed Nenshi? Have you talked to council members about this?
Yeah, we've reached out to many councillors. We are actively having discussions with them. We have not yet heard from the mayor, unfortunately, but we do have an invite to talk about this to him. The reality is we have a downtown that has 30% vacancy rates. We need to attract new businesses. We need to attract new young people to this city. And if our municipally owned electricity provider isn't willing to make the climate commitments that are necessary, it's going to be very hard to attract talents, because people want to live in a place where that's forward looking. People want to live in a place where they feel safe and where they feel like there's progression, and I don't see how we can do that without actually acting on climate aggressively.
Joe, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it.
No problem. I hope that was helpful.